Welcome to the June 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Urban Design Commission. My name is Marcus Uday. I am the chair of the commission. The following guidelines are in place for meetings in the council chamber at City Hall. Only the south entrance to City Hall will be open for access to the building. For exiting the building, all accesses can be used. Air purifying machines have been installed in the chamber, and hand sanitizer machines and disposable face masks will be available. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Speak into the microphone, please, and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments to the commission. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items by responding to the chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log on the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item being heard. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the commission and/or remove that person from council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please refer to the meeting agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or in the Arts District parking garage just south of City Hall, staff can provide you with a parking validation ticket. The agenda and documents are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would select the Urban Design Commission meeting. Once there, you would then click on an agenda item, and the related documents will come up below the item. Desiree, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Uday?
Present.
Commissioner Peoples?
Present.
Commissioner Black? Commissioner Charnico?
Present.
Commissioner Gullery?
Present.
Commissioner Holmes? Commissioner Miller?
Present.
Commissioner Wynn?
Present.
Commissioner Barnum?
Present.
I believe we have a quorum, so we will move on to the approval of the minutes, and I will take a motion when someone is ready.
I'd move approval of the May 25th, 2022 minutes.
I'll second that.
Sorry. I'll second that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Is everyone able to vote in PrimeGov, or is anyone's screen locked up?
I'm still trying to log in.
Okay. Desiree, we can do a voice vote for Commission Member Guillory.
Commissioner Gullery?
Okay, minutes have been approved. We have no cases withdrawn nor any continuance requests. Neither do we have any items on our consent docket. So with that, we'll move right along to cases for individual consideration, starting with item A, UDCA 20-00023. Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an application for address at 1520 Northwest 23rd Street at the southeast corner of Northwest 23rd and McKinley. Commission's seen this site a couple times before, most recently a few years back as a proposed dispensary that never went through the full process. They got approved, but they never carried out their plans. The latest iteration is to go back to a food service use restaurant, which was a couple of iterations ago. And of course, when you change from retail to restaurant, the parking requirements get all messed up and everything, and it requires a lot more parking. And as a consequence in this particular project, even with the reductions that are allowed by the code, both options that are presented to you this afternoon on this project require a variance on the required amount of parking. The first on option A, I believe, is 2 stall reduction, and the second one, which is option B, I believe requires a 4 stall reduction. The other difference between the two options being presented before you today is that there is a code requirement for a landscape buffer when a C3 property abuts an R2 zone, and that's the situation in this case. Option A does not show that landscape buffer along the south property line, and that's another variance request that would be applied to option A in addition to the parking variance. Option B, they have redesigned it to provide that parking buffer, but because of that, they've lost a couple more stalls, so they need a larger parking variance. So as a consequence, in our staff report, we've done an analysis for you on both options, and our recommendation to the commission is to approve option B, which would retain the required landscape buffer along the south property line and include a variance for parking stall reduction from the 27 to 23 stalls. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any comments the commission may have.
Is the applicant present?
Hello, Holly Hunt with Sam Gresham Architects at 400 Northwest 23rd Street. Yes, this is actually my second time to bring a project before you on this site. Commissioner Peoples, I recognize you from that previous approval. So again, this time with the restaurant, parking wasn't an issue with the dispensary being mercantile use. Here, I believe in the staff report, you'll find a previous restaurant has been approved on this site, and they did some general reductions. I'm not sure how they managed to get by without a variance on that approval. Also didn't, they maintained the existing footprint, the existing historic parking lot, and were given a CA at that time. This was in 2017, I believe, or so. So in other words, I feel like the commission all wants to see this site be developed and this building no longer be vacant. So I hope that you could find the merit in option A, even though it would require a variance to the landscape buffer. I think you'll find along this part of Northwest 23rd Street, it's very common for these parking lots to go right up to the center line of the alley. This alleyway behind those 23rd properties has been vacated for decades. So many of the property owners, even in the 60s and 70s, were developing these abandoned alleyways, and that's the case for this site as well. It's just a matter of, again, I represent the tenant, the leasee, who will be developing the property. So I think a lot of the reason that these projects never come to fruition is because who's going to pay for all these improvements? And I'm not saying that we're not willing to put forth money, and I know that's not what this commission is, reviewing. I just merely make the point of we want to see this improvement, and I think this is the quickest and most effective way for us to get from point A to point B, a nice, beautiful, developed lot that is in a thriving entertainment industry or entertainment corridor, where parking's really important. And I think option A, it's a better layout. It provides more parking, and it's a historic condition. And these neighbors are used to abutting a busy corridor. I don't know that a few trees will really make that big of a difference. I understand that it's certainly applied in all new developments. I hope will follow, or should, of course, follow this. And again, we've provided a ton more parking, a ton more landscape points as well in our proposed option A as a way, again, to just help screen the parking lot as best we can, both from the west and from the north. So we hope that you can approve option A, but of course, I've brought two because we want to get this off the ground. So I'd love to hear some feedback and what you think about an option A approval.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners at this time? Is there anyone from the public signed up to speak on this item? you are, am I understanding correctly, you're not opposed to option B, you just prefer option A?
Correct. Option A is, it's just a more simple, streamlined construction. We've already been approved for a revocable permit on this site, both in the alleyway for development and for the paving, but also for the landscaping in the right-of-way. And so if we don't have to change the curb cuts, if we don't have to change the historic traffic condition, it's a much quicker road to a C certificate of occupancy where we can get them in this building. That's preferred.
Any commissioners want to weigh in? If not, we will take a motion.
So a question for staff, if we did go with option A, does that also require a variance?
Option A requires 2 variances, one for a reduction in parking from 27 stalls to 25 stalls, and the second variance would be for the elimination of the required landscape buffer along the southern property line.
And I would add, if I may, that upon that variance request we've already applied for, one of the stated hardships we would make is the existing constraints of the site. The fact that the change of use triggers this need to come into full compliance and so on. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we would have a good argument, I believe, for a variance to this landscape buffer.
And a question for applicant. I was looking at some of the pictures, and it looked like the back of that lot, there's a fence there. Is that where, if we go with B, is that where the landscaping would go?
Well, essentially we do it has to have to remediate about 5 feet of that paving, remove the concrete curb that's just, inches in front of the fence, and pour a new concrete curb, as well as bring in dirt, compaction, prepare it for plantings.
So would the fence stay there with both options?
Correct.
Okay, so the landscaping would just be up against the fence?
Correct.
Okay.
And, I don't know if this is, I would really ask Mike, it's something I thought of today, if you all felt that perhaps a more beautiful fence or some kind of a new fence, perhaps even an 8-foot fence, a nice new wood fence along the back, that to us, I think is a great compromise to mitigate noise or the distraction of the busy corridor. So we'd be amenable to a condition of approval that would include some type of treatment toward the fence, and we'd be open to any suggestions. Currently, it's your typical 6-foot wood stockade fence. It's not an ugly fence, it's just a nice, typical residential fence. And again, should the variance to the landscape buffer not be approved at the Board of Adjustment, we would be back in front of you and approving option B. So I just, I want you to realize that the burden of proof is really on us to prove that this historic condition merits the hardship of a variance.
I have a question for staff. So if we did the approval, would we have to do 3 separate motions, or can we do it, bundle it all into one motion?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would we have to do 3 motions if we approve option A, if we do have, or can we do it in just one sweep motion?
I believe you have to do a motion for the approval and then a separate motion to provide a recommendation on the variance. But if you were to do the one that needs 2 variances, that can be one motion for the 2 variances.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve option A for the applicant on the basis of the condition in which she mentioned to mitigate the gate with a fence, a decorative fence or a bare fence for approval.
So I believe option A is the one that requires, oh, no, you're good, sorry. Making sure we got the right.
And then just so
Right,
I'm
one.
clear, a new fence to provide also a new fence along the rear property line? Happy,
Yeah.
that's a great condition. We'll be amenable to that.
A condition with a new with a fence. Can you say that again? With that,
I'm sorry, I can just barely hear you. I'm so sorry.
sorry, with the condition that you will uphold that that you'll put up
A new fence?
a new fence.
Certainly, yes. We would be happy to agree to that, rather than,
I'm not sure I like the idea about the fence, just because they haven't seen the fence and it's not on the agenda.
Oh.
I mean, I think you can make a condition, something like that, but I'd rather not, since we,
could we bring that to
Unless you-
staff?
That
if you
was
did
my
it for
su-
staff approval, maybe that would be, if you can tell them
Or for staff
like how
approval.
tall and what kind of
Certainly.
fence you're talking about.
And thank you, Counselor, because that's true. We would need to speak with the neighbors at least before we can determine that they're agreeable to a new fence. I'm sure they will, but
I'm going to suggest also that if you're going to entertain the idea of a new fence on the south property line, that you specify the height. I think right now you're looking at a 6-foot fence, and perhaps as a compensation for not having the landscape buffer, you might want to go to 8 to give them a better shield for noise and so on and so forth.
agreed.
Agreed.
And the material? Is it
Is your proposal for a wood fence? Because I heard decorative fence. Now I'm hearing fence. I think we ought to be a little more prescriptive to, kind of your earlier point. We should give a height, and what are you thinking? Because if it's just a wood fence going back, I don't know that that's necessarily something I would agree to, but if we could get a little bit better definition of the fence.
Okay.
I would suggest a wood fence of horizontal slats, a more modern-looking fence, but definitely a wood construction. Would that be, and of course, a cap with a molding that finishes it off, so it's not just the scalloped edge of the fence? Is that a more decorative, higher-end looking wood fence, if you will?
So we're going to say possibly a horizontal slat cedar fence that's 8 foot tall with a decorative molding cap.
I love that. Perfect.
To be approved by staff.
To be approved by staff.
And I hit the button on PrimeGov. I thought I was seconding Commissioner Nguyen's first. However we want to do this is fine. I don't mind. You just take it out and we can start it. There you go.
Do we need
Okay.
to restate that, though? It
Yeah.
seems like, okay.
So I have that the motion by Commissioner Nguyen is to approve option A with the condition that a new fence be submitted to staff for administrative approval at 8 foot tall and with a horizontal cedar fence with cap and trim to replace the existing fence. Is that adequate?
I think so.
It's out of it. Do you want me to say that again?
No, that's okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Need the variances.
Okay, that motion is passed, and am I correct? We'll need a separate motion. So I'll take another motion when you're ready, when anyone's ready.
So, a motion to approve recommendations of approval to Board of Adjustments for 2 variances. One regarding the requirements for the full number of off-street parking stalls, and the second variance for the buffer, grass buffer along the side.
Okay, that motion has also been approved. I believe that is all on that item. So we will move on to item B, UDCA 20-00038. Michael?
Yes, this item is a request. I'm sorry, lost my track here. For a site at 1125 Northwest 26th Street. This is a case that's been before the commission before for the approval of two multi-story, three-story multi-family structures. And associated with that approval in the UDCA, in the prior certificate of approval, an existing residence that is on the site was approved for a relocation. And that is, it was going to be removed from the site and placed in another neighborhood, I believe, up around above Northwest 36th. Pursuant to the approval to relocate that structure, the applicant was in the process of attempting to execute that move, and the home builder that came out to start work on that began the process, and the house kind of crumbled. So as a result, they're not going to be able to relocate it as it was approved in the previous certificate of approval, and now they're back before the commission today asking for your permission to just go ahead and demolish it based on the current condition of the structure. We've provided an analysis for the commission in our staff report, and we are recommending that the commission approve the request. We're prepared to respond to any questions or comments the commission may have.
Any commissioners have any questions for staff? Is the applicant present?
Asa Highsmith, 435 Northwest 23rd, Suite 214. It's like Michael said, we've came through. We put forth a lot of effort to plan this move. There's been a good faith effort in that. If you've been by the site, you can see that we've had professionals out there. They lifted the home. Every bit of the plan was to get it moved, and the structure just did not hold together. I'm a big fan of moving structures. We did that a lot more historically. It's something that I think the economics of in modern times is a little bit more questionable. But either way, as stated, we did our best on it, and the reality of the actual attempt to move it has left us in the hole for a lot of money and a lot of time. So we're back trying to do what we can to keep things moving.
Are there any members of the public here to speak on this item? Anything from commissioners? I will accept a motion.
I'll put forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the downtown, it says downtown, urban design district zoning. Is it downtown or urban design?
It's urban design.
Okay. I'm going to start over. So my motion is to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Commission ordinances as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
Looks like we have a second by Commissioner Guillory. Okay, that item has passed. Moving on to C, UDCA 22-00023.
Yes, this is an application for a existing unpainted brick building at 390 Northeast 36th Street. It is the headquarters building for HAC, which is Homeland. They've already done some work on the project site in previous administrative approvals to the warehouse structures at the rear of the property to the south of this building. And they also had some administrative approvals for replacement of windows on this same structure. However, the city has the building rehabilitation and conservation guidelines, and one of those guidelines in that document is that masonry, unpainted masonry buildings should not be painted. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And a lot of times people think, well, this guideline is for brick buildings that were built 100 years ago, but there's nothing in the guideline that suggests that it's for any particular time period of brick building. And as a consequence, we, as staff, are upholding the intent of that guideline and recommending that the commission deny the request to paint the building at this time. And we're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Any commissioners have any questions for staff? Applicant present.
Darren Stogsdill with HAC Inc., address 390 Northeast 36th Street. Our building is located on the southwest corner of 36th and Lincoln. We just recently built our first new store at 36th and Lincoln. We're currently looking to update the exterior of the building. The building is in very poor shape, deteriorated. The metal is rusted. We actually have water infiltration through the masonry work. We have previously done some renovations to our campus and updated the paint on our warehouse. We're trying to make the campus more uniform, more consistent with our branding. It's very dated. The metal is really bad shape. It's rusted pretty bad, so really we're just looking to update to make it look more uniform and protect our building.
Any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
I just want to note that we're having some technical difficulties with the presentation screen, but you do have the handout with the PowerPoint slides in PrimeGov that the commission members can see. So they can see the photos of the building and everything that you submitted. We're just having a hard time getting it to pull up on the screen.
Okay.
Do we have any members of the public here to speak on this item? Before I accept a motion on this, Michael, can you run down, I know we have visited this particular issue on a number of cases. Can you briefly overview the rationale behind this guideline that we have, just to refresh everybody?
Well, the guideline, as it's outlined or laid out for you in the staff report, it really talks about the natural protective layer that most brick has, the fire skin that's on the wall or on the brick, and that painting of the brick can seal in moisture inside the brick, which basically takes away its ability to breathe, and it can cause further damage if the moisture is retained inside the brick. That's the basic physical reason why the guideline is written the way it is. I'm not going to say that I know that the commission knows we've had cases like this before where approvals have been given, and this is a guideline, and the commission does have latitude to go ahead and approve it at their discretion.
I will state that I struggle with this a little bit, particularly given that our responsibility is as a design review commission. I take that to be a priority over other things within reason. I do think that being concerned about the functionality and the overall integrity of a building is something that we should consider. That being said, I'm aware of several efforts along this Lincoln corridor, whether they're rehab or new construction, and I would like to see that continue. My personal opinion is I'm not a fan of the current brick. It's no secret. I'm probably the closest person to approving painting masonry products in general. Have you done any studies, or have you had any inspections or anything? You said there were some problems that the building does have. Is it currently having any problems with removing moisture, or is there any issues with the sweep system?
It does. There's actually cracks in the mortar and such, and we did have it investigated. The cost to repair is out of our budget, so this is more cost effective. It's going to give us a better look, but we did investigate, but the cost is beyond our budget. We're just not able to do what would have to be done to repair all the mortar throughout the building. The mortar is deteriorated. You can take your finger and it just crumbles like salt. So, but that, and there's cracks in the brick. It's just not within our budget to be able to do that.
There are paints that are specific for this application. I don't see that anywhere here. I just see a paint color from Sherwin-Williams.
And I believe we did provide specifications, but we will.
Yeah, on the first color exhibit after the elevation, the drawn elevations, which is sheet A2.1, there are two color samples there. They have an iron ore Sherwin-Williams 70.69 for the roof element, and I can't quite read out the color for the cream color that they want to paint the brick, but that's also, it looks like it's also a Sherwin-Williams color.
So it's telling me the color of the paint, but it's not telling me the type of paint, whether it's an epoxy or whether it's whatever.
Yes, and I do have specifications. I believe we have sent that, but I can definitely get specifications that are designed specifically for masonry, block seal, primer, and everything specifically for brick.
Because I think a lot of the issues with painted brick is that it's not done appropriately.
That's correct.
I think that's going to be critical here, and I would say that if it does get approved, I would recommend that we include language that it has to go back to make sure that it's, specified properly in order to make sure that the primer and that the paint is appropriate for its intended use.
We've seen some preliminary scopes of work, or scope of work from the painting contractor on this project, and it's quite extensive. So if you want to direct staff to dig into that deeper and be the one to approve it administratively, we can do that.
Okay, that'd be great.
We had a house also in this area in Lincoln maybe a year and a half ago.
A house on Eubanks on
Yes.
the east side of Lincoln.
And they did all that research.
Just south of the
and-
Arby's, and that was painted as
Yeah,
well.
and they brought that specific type of paint. I think they brought like a representative from the paint company talking about how it can breathe with the brick, and that would be something I could support if others decide to go that direction.
Absolutely. We want to do it right to specification. We don't want it coming back off, so.
I'm not sure that was a Sherwin-Williams product, though. I'm thinking of the very same case, and I think it was a little bit different process. So, again, I think you can match the color, but that was specific to that application, so.
Yes. And we'd be happy to specify the application process, the materials, everything spec'd for masonry.
If there's no other comments, we'll accept a motion on the item.
So I'll put forward a motion to approve the application as submitted with the condition that the paint specification, installation method be submitted to staff for approval.
I'll second that. Oh,
Looks like we have a second by Commissioner Miller. And that item has passed.
Thank you very much.
Item D, UDCA 22-00028.
Yes, this is an application for the construction of a three-story residence at 801 Northwest 7th Street. I'm going to correct that on the first page of your staff report. I thought we had corrected it, but anyway, it is Northwest 7th at the northwest corner of Northwest 7th and North Chartel Avenue. Wanted to point out, first of all, that there is an 8-page handout, hard copy, that we've placed at the dais for you that's relative to this project. This is a memo that was sent out to the commission and the applicant and the general public yesterday afternoon at just before 1 o'clock. In that memo, we've detailed for the commission some changes to the staff's position on this project, specifically with regard to the requirement for a variance from the minimum building height. And based on the content of the definition of the word story in the zoning code, we've been unable to say that this project does not meet the code for minimum building height, and therefore the variance is not required. So that takes a big chunk of the issues off the table for this particular project. However, we do still have an issue that we outlined for you in the staff report regarding the design guidelines and our concern about the blank facade of the wall on the east side of the building facing North Chartel Avenue. The elevation that is in your packet, the east elevation that is shown in your packet, which is on page A2.1, is not the most current version of that east elevation. On the last page of the handout that's on your dais, there is a new and the latest iteration of the east elevation that was prepared for us by the applicant and submitted back on the 9th, I believe, of June. The change that you'll see in that elevation in your hard copy in front of you there is that below the yellow extension that comes out from the second-story railing wall that is at that east elevation, they've inserted a recessed stucco insert into the concrete block, the burnished concrete block that faces the street there on North Chartel. So that's the latest iteration that, in their attempt to address the concerns that staff raised about the blank facade on that east elevation. So we've still have that issue on the table for the commission to consider and determine whether or not this latest iteration of the design is sufficient to address those concerns. Do also want to point out that in addition to that recess, The project on this east elevation has also always had a planter wall that is parallel to the sidewalk on North Chartel, that provides a little bit of a distance between a buffer between the sidewalk and the east wall of the house, and also provides space for planting of landscape materials in that planter area that would help to soften the facade of that east elevation. So that completes our presentation, and we're prepared to respond to any questions or comments the commission may have.
Any commissioners have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So the height issue is taken care of, and the setback issue is also resolved because we're now at 2 stories?
No, we never really had any setback issue on either the Northwest 7th frontage or the Chartel frontage. The setback was kind of wrapped up in the definition of the minimum building height, and the minimum building height was always the concern here. Okay. And that was where the variance came in.
All right, thanks.
Applicant present.
Yes. Brian Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. I would like to add one clarification. Thanks for being here. The elevation that was included in yesterday's report, that was not officially a revision per se. It was a discussion point. If that had made a difference, our preference would be to maintain the original elevation, basically honoring the principles of modern design and not adding decoration for the sake of decoration. That said, if there's a strong opposition to that, we can further that discussion. But as it's presented in the first packet, I believe that adding the retaining walls, which structurally breaks up the plane of the elevation, with the planters, et cetera, are both contextual within the neighborhood. The guidelines asking for varied mass, a lot of that's mentioned in the staff report, is specific to, as far as how things are broken up, are specific to commercial developments, not necessarily residential. And so then the guidelines would point you to the actual context of the neighborhood, in my opinion. I do have a handout of other corner lot buildings in the same neighborhood to at least help illustrate. I have one for everybody. That we're responding to. Furthermore, adding the significant planters and vegetation really helps the pedestrian experience. We're doing the best we can. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of how the design developed the site, as are many of the sites on the corner specifically, is where it comes about. They're high slope sites, so you're automatically dealing with some kind of retaining wall to deal with that. And some of those illustrations illustrate that. Also, the site does not have alley access like would be ideally available, so that we could enter the alley in the garage. We're having to go up a steep slope to get the driveway. We did not want to place the garage door on the elevation. That would block the sidewalk. We also have a very shallow sewer that's a long ways away. And so the house actually has to be pretty high to actually get enough slope to hit that sewer without trying to deal with the pump for the house. So that's some of the physical constraints that have elevated the house. Other items that affected the design of the house is the general program. The owners which is common to most of the neighborhood, is trying to take advantage of the skyline view. And the bulk of the house being further to the west captures that skyline view, where the bulk of the house, where on the corner, you're looking at the backside of Valier. We don't feel like this house turns its back on the neighborhood. We feel like it is a nice addition to the neighborhood and within the context of the neighborhood. And I understand or saw many letters of support, and it seems like it would be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. The owner is present as well, if you would like to hear him have some words, but I'd like to hear some initial feedback right now if you have any questions.
Any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Is there anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If you'd approach the podium and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Peter Erdos. I'm the property owner. I currently live out in Arcadia, but before that, we lived on this street at the corner of Francis and 7th, and I was neighbors with Mr. Fitzsimmons. I moved to Oklahoma City in 1963 and grew up on the east side of town, and I remember when my mother first opened a bank account, it was at Lincoln National Bank on the Lincoln Boulevard, and I always marveled at the round structure of that building, and they even had a round elevator that was big enough for people could put living room furniture in there, and you could go down to your safe deposit box. And after that, I just became really interested in interesting architecture in and around Oklahoma City. The Bruce Goff property in Belle Isle was something I was always fascinated by, and I would drive by there when we were in high school, and then when we got a little bolder, we'd drive all the way out to Dr. Zudi's place way out in northwest Oklahoma City, because at night it looked like the head of a cat the way it lit up. So we came to find this area on 7th Street a few years ago and fell in love with it, and we lived there for 2 years and found it's a very interesting area. There are very few really unique areas in Oklahoma City, such as the Cary Place in the Glenwood area, that bring people down just to look at the place. And what I came to find out when we lived down there, and it was a Dennis Wells architect designed house that we lived in, is that people enjoy looking at our house. They like to come by on scooters, they have architecture tours, they walk by, they drive by all day. And so the one criteria I had when I asked Brian to design this house was I wanted people to stop and go, hey, that's cool. And that's all I wanted. And I think he hit that benchmark. And aesthetically, I think he hit the benchmark. And I understand there may be a question regarding the sidewalk and whether it's too overbearing with this wall because of pedestrian traffic. And I would like to offer as a compromise, if the board would be so inclined to approve this project, is that out of my pocket, I would pay to repair the sidewalk that is on Chartel Avenue that's in a, can I approach so you all can see it? This is the sidewalk directly next to where this wall is going to go. And for whatever reason, whether it was because it was an existing sidewalk or I don't know why, but the MAPS funding that paid for the entire sidewalk on 7th Street on the same side of the street as where we're building didn't cover this on Chartel. Now, this is just direct, this is south from this alley. This photograph is north of the alley, which is a brand new sidewalk with the path for the visually impaired. Even though I don't own that back swath of property that abuts the alley, I would be willing to spend out of my pocket to put in one of those visually impaired pads and to clean up that sidewalk and repair it and replace it as part of this construction. I think that would be as beneficial, if not more so, for any pedestrian than whether or not we put a yellow stripe a little farther down on that wall. And that's not to in any way diminish your scrutiny in looking this over, sir. I appreciate your scrutiny on that. And that's really about all I have to say, and I thank you for your time. I know you guys have a very important job, and you don't get paid for it, so I didn't come here to yell at y'all. So, thank you.
Comments from commissioners?
I very strongly support this. I think it's a great project. I don't think it needs the yellow stripe on the wall there. I walk past this site many days, and what's not really shown on the drawings is that where the house is, it sits up about 6 or 8 feet, and there's a grass slope, a hill there. So if you're a pedestrian, you're walking south on Chartel, you look over to this house, I mean, I'm 6 feet too, and I would turn, and I'm gonna see up over my head grass, and it'll be improved when they build. And then I see a planter, and then I see a masonry wall that has a cutout where someone in a swimming pool, if I understand this correctly, could be looking, down. So I don't think this is turning its back on the street, on the pedestrian. If anything, I think it's more open. You've seen examples of walls that were passed around. We have quite a bit of that. And not only is this not like those, it's made of a very good material. A lot of those are ephes or some other type of material that's not this quality. So I definitely support this. I don't think we need to add the little yellow box. Would love to hear what others have to say. And I know there's some members of the public here that may also want to speak.
I ran this schematic design by many of my neighbors just to make sure that they thought it was a good thing, because they've lived down there longer than I have, and I was met with nothing but enthusiasm. I'm actually flattered and humbled that there were this many unsolicited letters in support of our project, because, first and foremost, I want to be a good neighbor. And secondly, I want this to be part of the attraction to this area.
I will accept the motion if there's no further discussion.
I'd like to move that we approve this application on the basis that it meets the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
Okay, that item has passed.
Thank you.
We have no other business. Any comments from planning department staff?
No.
Any comments from commission members? Okay, our next meeting date will be Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. Applications are expected to have been submitted to staff by 4 p.m. on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. Michael, are you aware that we have items?
We have at least one I know of.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we're adjourned.